I want to start today by talking a little bit more about what the training industry benchmark report is and indeed why we do it. So essentially, it's a questionnaire we send out to training professionals every year. It's 25 questions, and I'm happy to say that this year we've had more respondents than ever before from across a lot of different sectors. We've had oil and gas, leadership and management, we've had health and safety, higher education authorities. And the reason why we do it is essentially to take the pulse of the training industry each year, try and identify what the key trends are and indeed what's going on within the industry. So this session is a little sneak peek at this year's report. We're just going to pull out a few key trends, a few key stats. And we're going to concentrate on three areas. We're going to look at training delivery, we're going to look at trends in terms of technology within industry, and we're going to have a look at sales and marketing within industry as well. Before we do that, I just want to pull out some key stats from this year's report and just talk about some that sort of really resonated with me. The first one was lack of resource as it concerns up 47% since 2016. So we're asking our training professionals to do more with less. But if you link that, when you look at that, 63% of training professionals are also telling us that they're yet to invest in automated technology. So surely there's a correlation between those two things, that actually there's this hesitation within the industry to actually automate and supplement the delivery options in terms of investing in technology. And I certainly think that's one area that the training industry needs to look at in more detail. Linked to that again, when you look at it, 4/5 of people are telling us that face-to-face training is still their primary delivery method, but with an increased focus on online, blended, and indeed gamification. And I think that's certainly a trend that's going to continue over the next few years. So what I want to look at first of all is delivery within industry. And what we've seen is a trend of a move away from the traditional sort of public open course bookings and a shift towards more tailored in-house courses. And the two main reasons for that is obviously within the B2B market, there's far more value for clients in courses that are tailored to their specification. It's tailored to their staff, it's tailored to their business needs, and that gives that business, that client, much more value in terms of the training that we deliver to them. And also it's more cost effective for those organisations to have someone come in and actually deliver to them rather than having individuals taking time out of the business to go and attend courses. So I think that's the two main reasons why we're seeing a shift towards a focus on more in-house courses. We've also seen an increase in focus on online learning since 2016. It's up 25%. And again, we've identified a few key reasons for that. So despite people telling us, 4/5 of people still telling us that face-to-face training is their main focus, over 50% of those people are also telling us that they're going to continue to look at online and blended learning. The two main reasons for that are we've seen a shift in demographics. So by 2020, 50% of the workforce will be millennials. And obviously those millennials are more interested in access to online learning, mobile learning, social learning, and indeed instant access to content. So that we can see that those millennials are not just wanting that face-to-face training. That's not to say there's not a value in that face-to-face training, but it's incredibly important that we diversify the way in which we offer that training. And we've actually seen a wider shift in consumer trends as well, with this more Amazon experience expected now, with a more holistic approach to the way that we consume products, the way that we consume training. You're no longer just able to focus on one delivery option. It needs to be supplemented by multiple different streams of training. And again, I think that there's a hesitation within the training industry to actually invest in technology to help with that. And I certainly don't see that as a challenge, but actually an opportunity for training organisations to increase the revenue by looking to investing in things that will help you increase your customer service, but also enable you to offer more streams of training to individuals. And sort of linked to millennials, we've also seen an uptake in apprenticeship delivery. So it's up 28% since 2016. And although it's not been a particularly good year for some apprenticeship deliveries, people like Learn Direct really struggling within the industry. And what that tells me is that it's incredibly important that you have a diversified service delivery. You cannot just rely on one type of learning, apprenticeships. You need to have options for short courses, longer programs, online learning, as well as apprenticeships. But that's not to say that there isn't a huge opportunity amongst apprenticeships in terms of millennials. We have a lot of younger people entering the marketplace, entering the workforce. And the Sutton Trust actually do a survey every year about linked to that. And we've seen a rise from 8 to 14% of 16 to 18-year-olds saying that they don't want to enter higher education. 4/5 of that 14% are saying that the main reason for that is financials. It costs too much money to go to university these days. So is there an opportunity there for apprenticeship delivery to pick up the slack there with individuals entering the workforce but also continuing their education? And I've got two really great examples of that. My two older brothers, they both entered the workforce as apprenticeships. They worked through that apprenticeship, moved on to then higher education, supported by their employer, received degrees, and one of them is now going on to complete his PhD. So there's a lot of value in apprenticeships for learners, but also with that shift towards a millennial workforce in the delivery of those apprenticeships as well as organisations. So what I want to move on to next is technology. And I'd like to see, can you raise your hand for me if you are still using paper happy sheets, survey forms? Okay, yeah, that's a fair few. Well, you're not alone there. 60% of people surveyed told us that they're still using paper happy sheets. And only 28% of people told us that they're using a digital platform to capture those feedback forms. And that for me is a real concern because actually feedback data is some of the most valuable data that any training organisation can capture. It tells us how well our learning is being received. It enables us to continue to improve and enables us to ensure that our training is being well received. And if you think about it, if you think about that concern about lack of resource, if you are capturing data in a paper format, you have to, in some way, put that into a spreadsheet, put that into a system in order to actually get the value out of that data. So that is a huge time constraint for any organisation. And we do need to see a shift away from that and a move to a digital format. And I appreciate that. I know when I speak to people, they say, if I put a digital form in front of somebody, they won't fill it in. They won't fill it in. If we give them a paper copy before they leave, then they will. But don't worry, we've got a session coming up in a few hours all about how best practice in terms of how to deliver feedback forms and indeed how to put them together. So hopefully, if you are still using paper forms, get yourself along to that session. So moving on. So this is a big concern for me. 63% of people surveyed said that they hadn't invested in automated technology. Now, I appreciate there's plenty of accessplanetiers here, so you can all pat yourself on the back of having already invested in that technology. But I'd like to see another raise of hands here. Who here is still using a spreadsheet in some way or other? Everybody. And that doesn't surprise me because I know from working in the training industry that training professionals, they love a spreadsheet, absolutely love them. But that is another opportunity for us to actually increase efficiency within the industry and move away from spreadsheets. And there's some really big downsides to actually continuing to use spreadsheets. First of all, because that data is manually entered, essentially it's always out of date. So you have to put data into that in order to update it. So it's never live data. If you put it into a system that's live, then obviously that information is constantly updated, constantly up to date, and you're getting more value out of that data. Not only that, but it's incredibly difficult to secure spreadsheets. And obviously we saw last month the introduction of GDPR. So if you're using spreadsheets, is that holding personal data? Is it being processed correctly? Is it secure? So again, that's a big concern for me. But also, in terms of data, it opens up quite an interesting question for me in a wider sense that do we as training organisations actually understand the metrics that are important to our business? Do we understand what data we should be capturing, what data we should be tracking? If you don't, we've got Christian and Alexander from EOS here today, and they'll be running a session which will touch on how to define the right measures to get traction within your business. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, then definitely attend that session as well. So moving on, what I want to concentrate on now is sales and marketing. And what we've seen is that reputation and referrals are still a huge part of gaining new business. And word of mouth is always going to be the most powerful form of marketing available. But obviously, because we live in the digital age now, it's no longer just about influencing 1 or 2 people, but 1 or 2,000 people. And out of interest, how many people here are using referral sites, something like Trustpilot or CostCheck? Can I see a raise of hands again? Anyone using those sort of systems? So you can understand the power of actually receiving positive reviews. And not only that, with the advent of social media and forums, it's incredibly important that we deliver a higher standard of service, because one bad review can have a detrimental effect on your business, and one good review can obviously have the opposite effect. So it's incredibly important today that our service offering is highly received. And there's a lot of ways that automated communications can help you with that, automated technology can help you with that, diversifying your delivery in order to ensure that learning journey is as positive as possible. And what that really says to me is it's about nurturing a positive brand for your business. And what I want to get at next is, if we're trying to nurture this brand and build this brand, is how do we put that in front of the correct audience? And again, there's a huge opportunity within the training industry to look at digital marketing. Less than 13% of people surveyed are currently using Google AdWords, and less than 17% are utilizing search engine optimization. And that is essentially about putting the right content in front of the right people. It's about understanding your brand, understanding what you sell, and putting it in front of people who want to buy. And that, for me, is a huge opportunity for the training industry to really modernize in the way in which we market ourselves. And again, we've got a couple of people here today. We've got Anya from HubSpot, to talk about marketing, and we've got Richard from Fat Media to talk about SEO. So again, if you really want to understand about how you can start to use those two functions in terms of increasing your business, increasing that brand awareness, then definitely, again, come along to those sessions as well. And what I want to look at next is the sort of wider marketing functionality. So if we're not using SEO and we're not using Google AdWords, then what are we using? And what we can see here is actually having a chat with Steve from Purple Griffin a few minutes ago, and he had mentioned to me that he had been to an event recently, or had chosen not to go to an event as a traditional form of marketing. And what we can see here is, as you can see, 70 and 69% are still on referrals and reputation, and that's never going to change. But 55% of organizations are still concentrating their efforts in email campaigns. But again, is that part of the pie going to reduce with the effect of GDPR? We've never given consumers so much ability to actually dictate how they want to interact with us. And what I think we'll see over the next few years is a shift away from email marketing, and indeed the greater move towards SEO, Google Ads, and indeed social media. Because essentially that gives you the ability to influence thousands of people. We've never been so connected as we are today. And finally today, what I want to have a look at is I want a few volunteers here. Can a few people give me just a couple of words? If you had to surmise the training industry currently, what words would you use? Anyone? Silent. Well, I'll tell you what my thoughts are on the training industry in terms of where we are. If I had to characterize the state of the training industry today, I would say that there's two things that the training industry needs to do in order to be successful. In order to be successful within the training industry, you need to embrace technology. You need to embrace automated technology, and indeed different forms of technology to enable you to diversify the way in which you train your delegates. And that, for me, is an opportunity to modernize. An opportunity to modernize your business, opportunity to modernize the way in which you deliver training in order to be successful. But these are the few of the words that came out from our industry training survey. This is a word cloud that we put together. And as you can see, some of them were quite surprising. So you can see that demand is low, high expectations. But what I would say about that demand is, if we're not targeting the correct people, if we're not using digital marketing as a format, then how do we understand where the demand is? If we're not putting the right content in front of the right people, then I think that's a great sort of explanation for why people believe demand is low.